Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going deep on a case that shook Schenectady, New York back in 2014, the murder of Wayne Best Jr. Now, you guys have already checked out the sources, so you know the basics. What we want to do today is unpack some of the more nuanced aspects of this case and maybe unearth some insights that'll surprise you.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case because on the surface it seems so senseless. Wayne Best Jr. was, by all accounts, an exceptional young man. Gifted athlete, incredibly outgoing, a real connector in his community. So the question everyone asks is why him? Who would want to target someone like that?
Yeah, it's a question that haunted the community for a long time. And as we dig into the investigation, you'll see how that question leads us down a winding path, full of unexpected twists and turns. Just to set the scene for you. December 9th, 2014. Wayne is shot outside his home in the early morning hours. It was his mother, Karen, and his brother, Johnny, who found him. Can you imagine the trauma?
It's difficult to even comprehend. And the sources really highlight how that trauma was made worse by the initial lack of forensic evidence at the crime scene. That, along with some, let's just say, less than sensitive interactions with the first detective on the case, really added to the family's pain and frustration.
Oh, yeah, the sources definitely paint that first detective as being, well, a bit out of touch. Karen was desperate for answers, but he allegedly made some pretty dismissive comments. Comparing her son's murder to a recent fire in the city? It's almost unbelievable.
It is, and it really highlights how important it is, even in these complex investigations, to remember the human element. Thankfully, Schenectady PD brought in a new lead investigator, Eric Clifford, who took a much more empathetic approach to the case.
Eric Clifford, now that's where things start to get interesting. Former insurance adjuster turned cop after 9/11. Not your typical detective background.
Right, and that seemingly unrelated experience actually becomes a key factor later on. But initially, even Clifford was facing a mountain of confusing leads. You've got the story of Devin, the Mace guy, who had that public altercation with Wayne a few months before the murder. Karen was convinced he was involved, and the police did look into it.
Devin even had that very public meltdown denying any involvement. You have to wonder if that was genuine or some calculated attempt to divert attention.
Yeah, it definitely raises questions about his state of mind
Yeah.
and his possible connection to the case. Then you have a jailhouse informant spinning this tale about a teenager and a guy called Savage, arguing with Wayne over drugs and money.
Sounds like something out of a crime drama, right? But it's these kinds of tips, often unreliable, that investigators have to sift through.
Exactly. And then there's that tip from the scared girl, claiming two brothers who owed Wayne money were scrubbing their Facebook pages. The police, to their credit, investigated all these leads thoroughly, determined to leave no stone unturned. But each one, unfortunately, ended up being a dead end.
It's like they were piecing together a puzzle, but missing half the pieces. Weeks turned into months, and Wayne's family was still left with no answers.
It's a testament to their strength that they never gave up hope. And thankfully, their persistence, along with Clifford's dedication, eventually paid off. You see, amid all these chaotic leads, there was this one tiny detail captured on a traffic camera near the crime scene. The footage was grainy, but it showed a vehicle leaving the area shortly after the shooting. Not much to go on, but for Clifford, it was everything.
And this is where his background as an insurance adjuster comes in.
Precisely. He had this, almost uncanny ability to identify cars based on the smallest details. He meticulously analyzed the footage and was able to pinpoint the make and model, a Chevy Tahoe. And that seemingly insignificant detail became the linchpin of the entire investigation.
Okay, I'm already seeing how this deep dive is going to be full of surprises. So they have the make and model of the car. What next? Did they just start pulling over every Tahoe in Schenectady?
Not quite. They used a tactic called a lobby search. Basically, a database search for registered owners of similar vehicles in the area. This narrowed down the pool of suspects significantly and led them to two names, Troy Saunders and Todd Min.
Hold on, I remember this part. Todd Min, wasn't he a friend of Wayne's? I even read that he attended Wayne's funeral.
You're absolutely right. Todd Min, the man whose car might have been involved in the murder, was actually a friend of the victim. He had been there grieving alongside Wayne's family. It's a chilling detail that adds a whole new layer of complexity to this story. And it gets even more complicated from here, but we'll save that for part 2 of our deep dive.
Yeah, it's one of those details that makes you question, well, everything you thought you knew about the case. Here's a guy, Todd Min, mourning with Wayne's family, and now the police are looking at him as a suspect. It's hard to wrap your head around.
Really is. Like something out of a psychological thriller. You have to wonder, what was going through his mind at that funeral? Was it genuine grief, or was it all an act? That's a question that probably haunted investigators as they dug deeper into his connection to this case. But they needed more than just a shared vehicle to link him to the crime. They needed concrete evidence. And as fate would have it, that evidence came from a seemingly unrelated incident.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more about this unrelated incident. How'd it connect back to Wayne's case?
So it was another shooting in Schenectady, completely separate from Wayne's murder. But here's the twist. The shooter in this new incident was actually a confidential informant for one of the Schenectady drug detectives.
So the police already had a connection to the person who committed the second shooting? What are the odds?
Almost too coincidental to be true, right? But that's how the pieces of this puzzle started falling into place. Investigator Clifford, recognizing this incredible opportunity, reached out to the detective handling the informant, asked him to have a conversation with the informant, see if he knew anything at all about Wayne Best Jr.'s case.
You can practically hear the gears turning in Clifford's head. He's got this hunch, this feeling that everything is connected somehow. What did he say? Did he have any information about Wayne's case?
He did. And what he revealed completely changed the course of the investigation. The informant told the detective that Todd Min and Troy Saunders were involved in Wayne's murder.
Whoa, so the informant directly implicated both of them. That's a huge break in the case. What did the police do with that information?
They acted swiftly, arrested both Troy Saunders, who they believed to be the shooter, and Todd Min, the alleged driver of that getaway car. But their work wasn't done. Through meticulous analysis of cell phone tower data, they uncovered a third accomplice, Chris Johnson. It turned out that this wasn't a two-man operation after all.
So 3 people were involved in Wayne's murder. What was the motive? Why target Wayne?
Based on their investigation and the information gathered from the suspects, police believe that it was a robbery gone wrong. They determined that Min, Saunders, and Johnson targeted Wayne because they knew that he sold, I guess you could say, small amounts of marijuana to friends.
So they weren't, professional criminals or anything like that.
No, it seems they were opportunistic, looking for an easy score. They saw Wayne as an easy target, someone they could intimidate into handing over weed and cash.
It's a chilling reminder that even small-scale drug dealing can have some very dangerous consequences. It's not a victimless crime, as some might think.
Exactly. And the sources highlight the calculated nature of their plan. Calling around to different bars that night, trying to track Wayne down. They followed him home and ambushed him outside his house.
It's just heartbreaking. Wayne was just trying to, have a night out with friends, and these guys were essentially hunting him. Did his friend, Sean, the one who was with him that night, did he provide any information about the attackers?
Unfortunately, no. Sean survived the attack, thankfully. But he couldn't provide much detail because the assailants were wearing masks. It seems Wayne resisted the robbery, and that's when Saunders shot him.
So police have 3 suspects in custody. What happened next? How did the investigation unfold from there?
The police used, classic interrogation techniques, separated the suspects, and leveraged their anxieties against each other. Their strategy was to target Min and Johnson first, hoping to secure their cooperation in exchange for lighter sentences.
The old good cop, bad cop routine, divide and conquer. Did it work?
It did. Both Min and Johnson confessed and agreed to testify against Saunders, the alleged shooter. This was a major turning point in the case, solidifying the prosecution's case against the main culprit.
I can only imagine the relief Wayne's family must felt, knowing that the people responsible for his death were finally being held accountable.
It was a huge step towards justice, but the legal battle was far from over. Saunders, facing the most serious charges, chose to fight the accusations. And here's where things take another unexpected turn. He opted to represent himself at trial.
Wait, what? He decided to be his own lawyer. That's a bold move, especially in a murder trial. Did he have any, legal experience?
Not that we know of. It was a high-risk gamble that puzzled many legal experts. And for Wayne's family, it must have been excruciating. Imagine having to sit through a trial, reliving that traumatic night, all while the man accused of killing your loved one is acting as his own attorney.
It's almost unimaginable. What was his defense strategy? Did he deny involvement in the crime?
His defense was, erratic, often confusing. He would deny involvement one moment, then contradict himself the next. It was chaotic, emotionally charged trial. But maybe the most chilling moment came during Saunders' cross-examination of a witness. He uttered a phrase that sent chills down everyone's spine. I had to put him down.
Oh my God. That's chilling. It's like he was talking about an animal, not a human being.
Exactly. A disturbing glimpse into his mindset. The stark lack of remorse for taking a life. And despite his attempts to, defend himself, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Min and Johnson both testified. detailing the events of that night and confirming Saunders' role as the shooter.
It sounds like that statement, "I had to put him down," really sealed his fate. Can't imagine the impact those words must have had on the jury and on Wayne's family.
Yeah, it definitely solidified the prosecution's case. Painted a picture of Saunders' mindset. Callous, detached, no regard for human life.
So after all the twists and turns, all the dead-end leads, and dramatic courtroom moments, what was the final verdict?
The jury found Troy Saunders guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Min and Johnson, who cooperated with the prosecution, got lighter sentences, 15 and 12 and a half years, respectively.
A bittersweet victory for Wayne's family, I imagine. Justice was served, but it doesn't bring back their son, brother, friend.
Yeah, it's a reminder that the wheels of justice, while they may turn slowly, do eventually deliver a verdict. But the story doesn't end there. Remember, this case is full of surprises. Just when it seemed like they'd reached some semblance of closure, another tragedy struck.
You're talking about the fire, right? The fire at Karen's house.
Exactly. The night before Todd Min's bail hearing, Karen's house was intentionally set on fire. Devastating blow for a family that had already endured so much. They lost their home, their belongings, their sense of security, all on top of the unimaginable grief of losing Wayne.
Like a cruel twist of fate. Did they ever figure out who started the fire? Was it connected to the case?
That remains a mystery to this day. No one has ever been charged with the arson. The sources, hinted suspicions, but nothing concrete.
Makes you wonder, was it revenge? A way to silence someone? Or was it just a random act of cruelty? Frustrating that this part of the story is unresolved.
It adds another layer of complexity to an already intricate case. And if that wasn't enough, there's one more twist we need to unravel. Remember Devin, the mace guy who had that confrontation with Wayne?
Yeah, the one who Karen initially suspected. He kind of disappeared from the story after the other suspects were arrested. What happened to him?
Well, the police had ruled him out as a suspect in Wayne's murder. He reappears in a shocking way. During the investigation into the fire, Johnny, Wayne's brother, was almost run over by a car.
Wait, are you saying Devin tried to kill Johnny? Why?
It seems his anger and resentment at being wrongly accused of Wayne's murder reached a boiling point. He was convicted of attempted murder for trying to hit Johnny.
This whole case is like a tangled web. Emotions, motives, and unanswered questions. Hard to believe this all stemmed from a robbery over some marijuana.
It highlights the ripple effects of violence, how one act can have such far-reaching consequences. Wayne's murder shattered a community, devastated a family, and triggered a chain of events that just spiraled out of control.
A sobering reminder that even seemingly small choices can have devastating consequences.
It begs the question, what can we learn from this tragedy? What can we do as individuals, as communities, to prevent these senseless acts of violence? How can we support families who have experienced such a profound loss? These are questions worth pondering as we reflect on the case of Wayne Best Jr.
A case that stays with you, makes you question, makes you think about the fragility of life and the lasting impact of our choices.
We started this deep dive with the question of why. Why Wayne? Why this senseless act of violence? And while we know the who and the how, the why lingers. A reminder that some questions might never have easy answers. But the search for those answers, the pursuit of justice, the resilience of the human spirit, those are the threads that weave together this complex and unforgettable story.
We hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on this case, maybe even sparked some thoughts about these bigger issues. Thanks for joining us.